Hello, uh, my name is Alex Molnar. I am part of the Ember core CLI team working on Embroider and Ember engines. I'm an Ember user since version 2.4. And now a little bit about this talk. If you have a large code base of Ember handlebars templates and have previously set template 3 times in front of a mirror, wishing for all of them to become template tag, you're in the right place. And with that, I hope I answered your question. Today's talk is about a code mod for Ember's next-gen template syntax. Meet template tag code mod, build mode for Embroider-enabled Ember applications. But more on that a bit later. First, some history. RFC 779 started in 2021. It has accepted template tag as the next-gen authoring format for Ember components. Since then, a lot of work has gone towards implementing the RFC. It was the first to describe what a code mod would need to do and the challenges that it would have to solve, like identifying where a given component, helper, modifier, or item came from. This is not trivial since in most apps, the items are all in one big global namespace. It would have to identify the source of a component, which could be an add-on. With that, as I said, a lot of work has gone towards implementing the RFC, and template imports is available to use today. And if you're not already using it, you want to give template tag a try after this talk, then you will need to follow the instructions in the add-on linked on screen. It also gives instructions on setting up prettier and ESLint, which are separate. So a bit about the motivation. Ember loves code mods. It's helping the ecosystem move with the framework. As an Ember.js community member, what I've learned is that how a framework approaches its own evolution greatly affects the life expectancy of apps built with it. Investing in robust transition paths with well-signaled deprecations, providing code mods, is one of the reasons why Ember has been and will continue to be my choice to build apps in. Providing code mods also helps to make the cost of keeping up with the framework as close to zero as possible. This particular code mod will hopefully also speed up adoption of template tag, which can be seen as a big lift and shift in the syntax of Ember.js. And all of this is good because the path forward is better traveled in company. So under the hood, if you pick, it is Embroider. So you can code mod with confidence on the shoulders of giants. The code mod takes the work that Embroider is doing on a normal run of your app and makes it permanent. It's built on top of the Embroider build pipeline, taking advantage of it to solve the RFC's challenges regarding resolution of components and much more. Figuring out where stuff comes from in an app turns out it's hard. It also helps with aiding users in any errors that they might need to correct in their Ember applications, and giving meaningful feedback when an error is encountered. This could be like missing packages, ambiguous syntax errors like template helpers versus non-angle bracket component invocations, and helps users through that process of using the code mod, and it's all on the path to the Vite build system that we've seen earlier. The code mod is part of Embroider compat, version 3.6.0 or greater. It's got compatibility starting from Ember version 3.28, so yay for that. So getting started, a few of the requirements are an optimized Embroider build, meaning static add-on trees, component helpers, and modifier flags turned on. And to switch the build mode to code mode. And you can see a small preview of what that means to try it out. A few code mode options. There are currently 2 supported flags to aid with the adoption of the code mod. The first one is should transform path. It basically allows users to act on a subset of templates in their application. By default, it acts on everything. So if you don't tell it you only want some, it's going to try and do everything. The second is a dry run. It's what would happen if I actually ran this build for real, but in a way where nothing actually changes. Dry run. Both of the flags are optional, and if you don't pass them, then it is going to try and process all of your templates and give you the actual output. So by default, all you have to do is require the Embroider compat of version 360 or greater, invoke the template type code mod, almost exactly like you'd invoke a compat build in a normal Embroider application, and possibly give it some options. Here you see some examples of me trying this out on the SuperRentals repository. What I've done, the only thing I've done to the whole project is add Embroider compat and the rest of the Embroider packages that are required, and change Ember CLI build to call the template type code mod function. In here, I've asked it to only include the Jumbo component or any component that contains Jumbo in it. You get the full path to the component, so you can decide I'm going to work on a particular folder depending on how you've got your components organized. So for this example, I've also set the dry run flag, and this is what you would expect to see. You get a report of what it would do, like write a new file into app components Jumbo.js. It gives you the output of the file, and then it would it tells you that it would remove app components Jumbo HPS. So this acts as a normal build. You also see here the way I invoke this is the normal way you would build your Ember application. I just say Ember build, and it changed the files. But it would have changed if I hadn't given it the dry run flag. So what happens if you don't want to dry run? Well, you get a file called jumbo.js with the content of the template-only component correctly implementing the RFC. So here we see a default export of template-only component. And on the right-hand side, you see the diff that VS Code shows for the changes in the repository. I will mention that the code mod will never try to remove any unversioned file. So if you run it on a file that is not version controlled, you will get an error because that's not safe to do. Also, if you've got a GJS file, it's never going to attempt to override it. So all of the operations are as non-destructive as they can be at this point in time. So you say, but what about components that have a backing class? Well, in that example on screen, we see one such example, what such component. This time we're talking about the rentals component. And what we see here is the code mod got rid of both the backing class and the template and merged the two files together while also correctly importing the components like the rentals filter from the correct path in your application. So it correctly figured out where the components you've had in your template came from, added an import, and then change your template to invoke the correct component. So we've suddenly gone from having two files down to one. This means your logic and your template are in one file, no more context switching, going from one to the other. So some known limitations. It is currently in beta. Please try it out and report any feedback that you have. The add-ons version for the code mod is coming soon. Right now, the code mod's only been tested on JS and HBS. So TS projects, once I find an open source one that I can run it against, or I receive feedback on how well it works or doesn't. One note, I've slightly alluded to this earlier in my earlier slides, that Prettier and ESLint are external to the code mod. So the expectation would be you run Prettier on your code base after running the code mod. And one of my high priority improvements are in the import names. Right now, the code mod errors on the side of avoiding any possible clashes of names in the scope. And we can probably do a lot better with the naming of those. And that's it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alex. I'm sure that's going to be very helpful for a lot of teams. I think we have some time for questions because we're pretty fast today and quite ahead of time. So does anyone have any questions in the chat, or just unmute yourselves? And
I'm just going to go back to this screen just so you admire it a little bit more. Because it is a thing of beauty, like going from one format to the other automatically on your whole repository.
so there's one question in the chat. I think you kind of answered that at the end. Is there work happening to have this work with TypeScript code bases?
Show me an open source code base for TypeScript, and I will show you a working code mod or fix whatever is wrong with it.
Or I guess everyone who has a TypeScript code base could just run that and report any errors.
Yes, please do.
To you, right? Or maybe ideally better reproduction.
That would be much helpful.